They denied me 7 times, each rejection delivered with a practiced smile and hollow excuses. Now they schedule appointments with my assistant just to get a meeting. I didn't answer with words. I answered with a company, the one they now call their #1 competitor. But my story doesn't begin in a boardroom. It starts in a dingy rented apartment with a dead mouse stuck in my printer. My name is Madeline Rhodes, and 5 years ago I was just another NLP engineer with student loans and big dreams in Milwaukee. I lived in a third-floor walk-up where the radiator clanked all night and the neighbors fought about everything from bills to breakfast cereal. But I had something most engineers only dream about, a genuinely revolutionary idea. While everyone else was building chatbots and virtual assistants, I was developing an engine that could predict brand reputation crises before they happened. My algorithm analyzed linguistic patterns across social media platforms, identifying subtle shifts in consumer sentiment that traditional analytics missed. It could spot a PR disaster brewing weeks before it erupted. For corporations hemorrhaging millions over viral mishaps, my technology wasn't just useful, it was salvation. I built the first prototype using salvaged server parts and running on electricity. I siphoned through an extension cord to avoid overloading my apartment's ancient wiring. The day I got it working, I was alone in my apartment with a bottle of $7 champagne and a dead mouse I just extracted from my secondhand printer. Not exactly the glamorous origin story tech magazines love to print. 3 months of sleepless nights and 18 pitch rejections later, I finally got my break. Brightspire Group, a marketing consultancy firm serving Fortune 500 clients, wanted to acquire my technology. Their offer wasn't just good, it was everything I'd been working toward. They promised to keep me on as head of innovation, maintain my equity stake, and scale my creation globally. When their CEO shook my hand and said, "Welcome to the family," I actually believed him. The contract negotiations were exhausting. I couldn't afford proper legal representation. So I called in a favor from my college roommate's brother, Elliot Graves, who had recently passed the bar. He reviewed the 60-page document during his lunch breaks. "This all looks standard," he said, flipping through the pages. "Except for this clause you've added." He pointed to Section 9B.11, which I'd insisted on including, in the event of my termination without cause. I would have the right to repurchase my original technology and branding for exactly $1. "Is this really necessary?" Elliot asked, frowning. "It seems paranoid." "Call it insurance," I replied. "I'm selling my life's work for essentially nothing up front. I need some protection." Elliot shrugged. "Fair enough, but I doubt anyone at Brightspire will read this far into the legal boilerplate. Most executives skim the highlights their lawyers prepare." I signed the contract the following Monday, trading my technology for $1 and the promise of a bright future. The small cardboard box of possessions I brought to my new corner office at Brightspire felt pathetically inadequate compared to the sleek modernist furnishings. My team expanded quickly. Rita, a brilliant developer who could code faster than anyone I'd ever met. Thomas, a designer with an intuitive understanding of user experience, and a handful of data scientists who shared my vision. For 6 months, everything was perfect. Our platform detected early warning signs for 3 major brands, saving them from potential disasters. The Brightspire executives paraded me in front of clients like a prized show dog. "Meet the genius behind our predictive analytics," they'd say, as I explained how my algorithm worked. The first red flag appeared during a quarterly planning meeting. I wasn't invited. When I questioned my assistant about it, she looked uncomfortable. "I thought you knew," she said. "They've been restructuring the leadership pipeline." That night, I received an email announcing Clint Parson as the new Chief Marketing Officer and Melissa Vaughn as Chief Brand Strategist. My role wasn't mentioned at all. The next morning, Clint stopped by my office. He was tall and polished, with the practiced smile of someone who'd spent his career in boardrooms rather than coding rooms. "Madeline," he said, settling into the chair across from my desk without being invited. "I'm excited to work with you. I've heard so much about your foundational contributions." The way he emphasized foundational made it sound like ancient history. We should schedule some time to discuss how we can evolve your platform to align with our new strategic vision, he continued, already checking his watch. My platform is exceeding all performance metrics, I replied. What exactly needs evolving? His smile tightened. Everything can be improved, Madeline. That's the Brightspire ethos. We'll talk soon. Over the next few weeks, I watched as my carefully constructed algorithm was dismantled and reassembled into something flashier but less effective. Melissa insisted on a more intuitive visualization layer that prioritized colorful graphics over accurate data representation. When I objected, citing the precision trade-offs, she patted my shoulder. We need to make this accessible to C-suite clients who don't speak tech, she explained. They need something they can understand at a glance. They don't need to understand the mechanics, I argued. They need to trust the results. But my protests fell on deaf ears. Meetings about my own technology began happening without me. My team was gradually reassigned to other projects or departments. Rita was the first to quit. I can't work like this, she told me as she packed her desk. They've turned something brilliant into corporate mediocrity. Thomas followed a month later. By the end of the year, none of my original team remained, and I found myself increasingly isolated, the founding energy they referenced in meetings but rarely consulted. My first performance review under the new leadership was a masterclass in corporate doublespeak. Clint praised my technical acumen while suggesting I needed to develop my strategic vision and team collaboration skills. Despite the platform's continuing success with clients, I received no promotion, no raise, and a bonus that barely covered a month's rent. I doubled down on my work, developing 3 comprehensive strategy proposals to expand our technology's capabilities. All 3 were rejected for being too resource-intensive or not aligned with current priorities. Meanwhile, Melissa's team launched a cartoon mascot for our platform, a wide-eyed robot they called BlinkyBot that literally blinked when it detected potential PR issues. Clients love it, Clint assured me. It makes the whole thing more approachable. I watched as my sophisticated risk assessment engine was reduced to a blinking cartoon. The pattern continued through 7 consecutive review cycles. Each time, despite consistently positive client feedback and innovative contributions, I was passed over for promotion. The excuses varied. Not enough leadership experience. Still developing executive presence. We're restructuring the advancement pipeline. But the outcome remained the same. I was stuck in place while others climbed past me. After the 7th rejection, I found myself alone in the office at 11 p.m., staring out at Milwaukee's modest skyline. The cleaning staff had already come and gone. I pulled out my original contract with Brightspire from my desk drawer, flipping to Section 9B.1, my insurance policy. I ran my finger along the text, wondering if I'd been naive to think I'd never need it. The next morning, I called Elliot. Is Clause 9B.1 still valid? I asked without preamble. Technically, yes, he replied after a moment's hesitation. But it would only be triggered by termination without cause. They're more likely to make your life miserable until you quit. And if they do fire me? Then you'd have 45 days to exercise the option to repurchase your technology for $1. But Madeline, large corporations have armies of lawyers who can find ways around these things. Be careful. I thanked him and hung up, a plan already forming in my mind. I started documenting everything, every meeting where my input was ignored, every email where my concerns were dismissed, every instance where my name was removed from presentations about technology I'd created. I backed up the original code and architectural documents I still had access to. I reconnected with Rita and Thomas, asking casual questions about their new jobs, but really gauging their loyalty to our original vision. The breaking point came during a quarterly review meeting. Clint unveiled the next evolution of my platform, a complete redesign that abandoned the core linguistic analysis in favor of flashier but less accurate predictive models. The centerpiece of the presentation was an expanded role for BlinkyBot, whose eyes now changed colors based on perceived threat levels. I couldn't help it. I laughed out loud. The room fell silent as every head turned toward me. Is something amusing, Madeline? Clint asked. his tone icy. "You've turned a sophisticated prediction engine into a mood ring," I replied. "So yes, I find that somewhat amusing." Melissa cleared her throat. "Studies show that anthropomorphic interfaces increase client engagement by 47%. At the expense of accuracy," I countered. "These changes will drop our prediction reliability by at least 30%. "That's your opinion," Clint said dismissively. "The board has already approved the redesign." I nodded slowly, understanding that this was the beginning of the end. No one explicitly said I was being pushed out, but the message was clear in every sideline suggestion and every meeting invitation that never arrived. 2 weeks later, I received the email I'd been both dreading and expecting. HR update, meeting request, Thursday, 4:50 p.m. I spent the intervening days preparing. I emptied my personal items from my office gradually, taking home a few things each evening. I backed up all the data I legally had access to. I confirmed with Elliot that my contract clause was ironclad. And I wrote a check for exactly $1, made out to Brightspire Group. Thursday arrived with the grim inevitability of a scheduled execution. I wore my best suit, charcoal gray with subtle pinstripes, and my most comfortable heels. The HR director, flanked by Clint and a company lawyer I'd never met, delivered the news with rehearsed sympathy. "Due to organizational restructuring and evolving business needs, we're eliminating your position effective immediately." I didn't argue or plead. I simply nodded, maintained eye contact, and asked, "Is there a specific cause for termination cited in my record?" The HR director exchanged glances with the lawyer before replying, "No, this is strictly a business decision. Your performance has been satisfactory." I smiled for the first time that day. "Thank you for clarifying." A security guard escorted me to my already half-empty office to collect my remaining belongings, then to the elevator. As the doors closed, I handed him an envelope to deliver to the legal department. Inside was the signed check for $1 and a simple note. "I hereby exercise my right under Section 9B.1 of my employment contract to repurchase all intellectual property and branding related to the original risk assessment platform." The next 72 hours were chaos. For Brightspire, not for me. Their legal team discovered, too late, that I had never fully transferred ownership of the core technology. The trademark for the original name was still registered to my LLC, and most importantly, the contract clause was valid and enforceable. The first client to call me was Clairvest Biomed, a pharmaceutical company that had been using my platform to monitor public sentiment about their clinical trials. Their chief communications officer didn't mince words. "Whatever you're building next, we want in. The system hasn't been the same since they started messing with it." Adastra Telecom followed, then Meridian Retail Group. Within a week, I had verbal commitments from 6 former clients. The tech blogs picked up the story. "Engineer reclaims her brainchild for $1" became a viral sensation in industry circles. I leased an office space 2 blocks from Brightspire's headquarters, close enough to be a daily reminder of their mistake. I rehired Rita as my CTO and Thomas as head of design. When former colleagues from Brightspire began reaching out, I created a simple hiring policy. No formal interviews, just a conversation about why they wanted to join us. I wanted fighters, not just talent. Our new company, Pulse Catalyst Inc., launched with the original algorithm at its core, but with significant improvements Rita and I had developed in the months since my departure. We framed a copy of the $1 check and hung it in our reception area. A reminder that sometimes the smallest transactions can have the biggest consequences. Brightspire's downfall wasn't immediate, but it was steady. Clint resigned after 2 quarters of declining revenue. Melissa faced an internal investigation regarding the BlinkyBot project's massive cost overruns. And one by one, their flagship clients migrated to Pulse Catalyst. Exactly 1 year after my termination, I stood on stage at Tech Forward, the industry's premier conference, delivering a keynote address. In the front row sat 3 Brightspire board members, there to assess the competition they'd unwittingly created. "Innovation isn't just about technology," I told the audience. "It's about integrity. about building tools that actually solve problems rather than just looking impressive in a pitch deck. As I concluded my presentation, I pulled out the framed dollar bill check. They thought they dismissed me with a meeting, but I had planned to turn a nod into a coup. The standing ovation as I left the stage drowned out whatever the Brightspire executives might have said. It didn't matter anymore. I wasn't their former employee. I was the CEO of their biggest rival. That evening, I returned to my new office with its view of the Milwaukee skyline. On my desk sat a bottle of champagne, not the $7 kind this time, and a note from my team. It read simply, "To the next 7 years." I smiled, popped the cork, and raised a glass to the future I'd built from the ashes of rejection. The journey from that dingy apartment with its dead mouse and faulty printer to this moment hadn't been direct or easy. There were nights I questioned everything, mornings when imposter syndrome threatened to paralyze me. But through it all, I held on to one certainty. My technology worked. It solved real problems. And no amount of corporate politics could change that fundamental truth. Pulse Catalyst grew rapidly over the next 2 years. We expanded beyond brand risk assessment into comprehensive reputation management, offering not just early warnings, but strategic response protocols tailored to each client's industry and audience. Our team grew from the original 7 to nearly 100, occupying 3 floors of what was now called the Pulse Catalyst building. Rita thrived as CTO, transforming from a brilliant but shy developer into a confident technical leader who commanded respect throughout the industry. Tomas built a design team that prioritized clarity and functionality over flashy gimmicks. And I found myself growing into the CEO role in ways I never expected, learning to delegate, to inspire rather than just direct, to see beyond the code to the larger business landscape. We never implemented a cartoon mascot. Instead, we let our results speak for themselves. The first time I found myself across the negotiation table from Brightspire was when Helix Global, a multinational conglomerate, was choosing between our companies for a comprehensive reputation management contract. Melissa represented Brightspire. Her smile strained as she avoided meeting my eyes. Our BlinkyBot system offers an intuitive interface that even non-technical executives can understand at a glance, she explained, launching into her rehearsed pitch. When my turn came, I simply opened my laptop and pulled up our track record. We've prevented 17 major reputation crises for our clients in the past 18 months. I stated, the financial impact of these interventions exceeds $400 million in preserved market value. We don't need cartoon characters to explain our value. Helix signed with Pulse Catalyst the following day. As our company grew, I made sure we never repeated Brightspire's mistakes. Every engineer, data scientist, and analyst received equity in the company. Innovation was rewarded, not just with recognition, but with real advancement. We implemented a policy that no suggestion would be dismissed without proper consideration and feedback. 3 years after founding Pulse Catalyst, I received an unexpected email from Clint Parson, who had moved on to a smaller marketing firm after leaving Brightspire. "I owe you an apology," he wrote. "I failed to recognize what we had in you and your technology. Pride and politics got in the way of good business sense. Congratulations on your success. It's well-deserved." I appreciated his message but never replied. Some bridges remain best uncrossed. The true validation came not from former adversaries, but from the industry itself. When Pulse Catalyst went public in our 4th year, our IPO valuation exceeded Brightspire's market cap by a factor of 3. The financial press called it the ultimate corporate revenge story. But that characterization missed the point. This wasn't about revenge, it was about building something genuine, something that maintained its integrity even as it scaled. On the morning of the IPO, I gathered our now considerable team in the company atrium. Some had been with me since those first days in the 2-room office. Others had joined along the way. All had contributed to this moment. Today isn't about stock prices or market valuations. I told them, it's about proving that doing things the right way, prioritizing innovation and integrity over corporate politics, can succeed. We didn't win by playing their game better. We won by changing the game entirely. The applause that followed wasn't for me, but for all of us. for the culture we'd built together, for the principles we'd refused to compromise. That night, alone in my office after the celebrations, I found myself thinking about that dingy apartment where it all began, about the dead mouse in the printer, about the countless rejections before Brightspire, about the 7 promotion cycles where I was passed over despite exceeding every metric. I realized then that success isn't a straight line. It's a series of detours, setbacks, and unexpected opportunities. Those 7 rejections weren't just professional disappointments. They were preparing me for something bigger than I had imagined possible. The next morning, I instituted a new hiring initiative at Pulse Catalyst, actively recruiting talented individuals who had been overlooked or underestimated in their previous roles. People who, like me, had been denied promotions despite their contributions. People whose ideas had been dismissed or appropriated. People with the hunger that comes from being undervalued. Overlooked talent is our competitive advantage. I explained to our HR director, "Find me the brilliant people other companies are too short-sighted to recognize." This policy yielded some of our most innovative team members, people with unconventional backgrounds, self-taught programmers, career changers with unique perspectives. Our competitors couldn't understand how we consistently found such exceptional talent because they were still looking in all the traditional places. 5 years after my unceremonious escort from Brightspire's offices, I received a call from their board chairman. Brightspire was struggling, their stock price at an all-time low, their client roster diminished. They wanted to discuss a potential merger. "We believe there could be significant synergy between our companies," he said, using the kind of corporate language that had always made me cringe. "You mean you want us to rescue you from the consequences of your own decisions?" I replied, not unkindly, but directly. There was a long pause before he answered. "Essentially, yes." I considered it briefly. The symmetry of acquiring the company that had once discarded me was undeniably appealing. But I declined. Pulse Catalyst had thrived by looking forward, not backward. Absorbing Brightspire's outdated infrastructure and demoralized workforce would only slow our momentum. Instead, I made a different offer. We would consider hiring their top talent individually, based on merit and cultural fit. If Brightspire decided to dissolve or sell to another acquirer, it was more mercy than they had shown me, but also good business, cherry-picking the best while leaving the institutional problems behind. In the end, Brightspire was acquired by a larger marketing conglomerate and gradually faded into corporate obscurity, their name becoming a footnote in business school case studies about innovation mismanagement. Several of their best people did join Pulse Catalyst, bringing valuable client relationships and institutional knowledge without the baggage of the old corporate culture. 7 years to the day after I was terminated, I stood on the balcony of our company headquarters, watching as the Pulse Catalyst logo was installed on the building formerly occupied by Brightspire's Milwaukee offices. We hadn't planned the timing. It was simply when our expansion necessitated additional space, and their lease had become available. But the coincidence wasn't lost on me or on the business press, who ran articles with headlines like, "Full Circle, Pulse Catalyst Claims Former Rivals Territory." That evening, I hosted a dinner for my core team, Rita, Thomas, and the handful of others who had been with me since the beginning. As we raised our glasses, I found myself reflecting on the journey. 7 years ago, I was shown the door for believing too strongly in the integrity of what we built. I said, "Today, that belief has brought us here, not just to a larger office or a higher valuation, but to a company that stands for something real. We didn't just build better technology, we built a better way of doing business." Rita smiled. "To the dollar that bought us our freedom," she said, raising her glass higher. "And to the mouse in the printer," I added with a laugh. Sometimes the humblest beginnings lead to the most extraordinary destinations. As we continued our celebration, my phone buzzed with an email notification. It was from a junior engineer who had joined us recently, a young woman who reminded me of myself 7 years earlier. She had developed a potential enhancement to our core algorithm, one that could extend our predictive capabilities from brand reputation to broader market trends. In that moment, I recognized the most important lesson of my journey. Success isn't measured by surpassing your former adversaries, but by creating something that outlasts them, something built on genuine innovation and integrity. Pulse Catalyst wasn't great because Brightspire had failed. It was great because we had remained true to the vision that Brightspire had abandoned. I excused myself from the table long enough to reply to her email. I'd like to hear more about this. Let's meet tomorrow morning to discuss implementation. 7 promotions denied had led to something far greater than I had originally sought. Not just a title or an office, but the chance to build a company where innovation was valued and talent was recognized, where no promising idea would be dismissed because it didn't fit someone's preconceived notion of what was possible. They had shown me the door, but in doing so, they had unwittingly opened a much larger one. And I had walked through it, not alone, but with a team of like-minded individuals who shared my commitment to creating something genuine and valuable. The future stretched before us, full of possibilities that extended far beyond the revenge narrative the press loved to tell. This wasn't an ending. It was barely even the middle of our story. And I couldn't wait to see what the next 7 years would bring. As I rejoined my team at the table, I realized that the greatest victory wasn't in proving Brightspire wrong. It was in proving ourselves right, in demonstrating that integrity and innovation could coexist, that quality didn't have to be sacrificed for marketability, and that sometimes the best response to rejection isn't resentment but reinvention. They had ignored my promotion 7 times. But in doing so, they had propelled me towards something far more significant than any title they could have offered. They had inadvertently pushed me to create not just a competing product, but an entirely different kind of company, one that would change our industry forever. Sometimes being underestimated is the greatest advantage of all. And sometimes a single dollar can purchase something truly priceless. The opportunity to build the future you always envisioned on your own terms, without compromise. As the Milwaukee skyline glittered beyond our windows and my team continued their animated discussion about future possibilities, I silently thanked those who had doubted me. Their skepticism had been the catalyst for my greatest achievement. They had ignored her promotion 7 times. Now she was CEO of the rival company. But that was just the beginning of the story, not the end.